On today's show, the Cleveland Cavaliers have been the best team in basketball so far this season, but we still think there are ways to get better. I brought in Spencer Davies from Cleveland Cavaliers on SI to talk about that on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, a number of other stops along the way as well. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about the Locked On Cavs podcast. Also available on YouTube. If you're watching this, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show, of course, is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. So, Spencer, the Cavs are off to what is one of the best starts in franchise history. I know to a certain point, I don't know if it still is, but to a certain point, it was the best start in franchise history. They had never won 15 straight games to open up the season. They have the best record in basketball. They're number one in the Eastern Conference. They are near the top of the league in a lot of metrics, but they're not a perfect basketball team. I do think that they're a basketball team that is a championship contender. Everyone that I talk to that works either for the Cavaliers or for other organizations has told me they think that this is a team that's capable of winning the NBA Finals in June, but there are still areas where they can improve. When you think of that, where do you first look at and say, okay, this team can get better in this area? What pops into your mind first?
Well, it's the subject you've been bringing up pretty much is the defense. When you're looking at the pace they play, it's obviously going to take a little bit of a step back with this team. It was kind of showing to be a little bit faulty against Atlanta, but I mean, that's one of those situations in those series where I think the Hawks just had their number. And again, that Jalen Johnson and bench unit really killed the Cavs just with their size. So that's probably where I'm looking at first. I think the rebounding's also got to be a little bit better at finishing possessions and making sure that they're crashing the glass hard and getting Jarrett Allen involved and engaged in the game the way he was at the beginning of the season. Kind of seen a little slippage in that area, but that also has to do with how teams are guarding him and how teams are keeping him off of the board. So those are the first things that come to mind for me. And I mean, shot making is another thing, but continuing to cut, continuing to move the ball and make sure you're doing more of the movement with the pass than with the dribble.
So the defense absolutely is what pops into my mind. I thought that first Atlanta game, going back over a week ago at this point, was probably rock bottom for them on that side of the floor, where they were just, I mean, they could not get a stop for anything. It was the worst defensive performance they've had all year, both in terms of points allowed and defensive rating. I actually thought last Friday's game against the Hawks wasn't a bad defensive game. They forced a ton of turnovers. Like Atlanta shot a solid possession from the floor, but the Cavs forcing as many turnovers in that game as they did made it so it was just a little bit more palatable. And then offensively, they were awful. And that's why I look at that game being lost. And then, you look at Boston, you look at Washington, who I understand Washington's really bad, but I thought the defense played really well in both of those games. The Jarrett Allen point is interesting because he had what I thought was, and maybe you disagree with this, I thought he had a really strong start to the season. Thought he came out of the gates in like the first 7 or 10 games that he played. I thought he was really, really good. And since that, and at a certain point around then, it started to seem like he hit a bit of a wall. And even Kenny Atkinson mentioned that he was starting to run on fumes a little bit. And at that point, he was leading the Cavs in minutes played at like right around 30 a game, which is a number that is low. And I also think he was leading in part due to just how the rotations were working when the Cavs were blowing teams out, where maybe Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell were not getting an extra shift at the end of the game the way Jarrett Allen was, because when it was time to pull the starters, it would normally be time to put those guys back in. So I think that maybe had a little bit to do with that, but I don't know that he's ever really recovered from that. Like since that point in time, I'm not sure that he's gotten back to what he was at the start of the season. And I'm speaking on both ends of the floor.
Sure. Again, it kind of has to deal with how teams are crashing in on the paint and making sure that obviously they're concerned about him as a role threat. They're concerned about him being the offensive rebounder that he is by trade. Kenny even spoke to it, though, pregame a couple games ago, just about how they want him crashing a little harder and being himself in that situation. We know defensively how good of a rim protector he is. When he's out in space, sometimes he can get beat, but that's also why you have Evan Mobley there when he's on the floor with him. I don't think that it's necessarily that he's playing bad. I just think that of things to be nitpicky about, maybe you look in that direction. Just from the last, I don't know, week and a half, whatever you may say. Because, I mean, they had the 17 games in 28, 29 days to start the season. And, you just saw that the physical toll it was taking on him, most honestly, like it was him that was showing signs of the fatigue, I feel like, the most out of everybody. And that's a lot to ask, because you look at how much he's rim running, how much he's sprinting the floor, the pace that they're playing at. It's just natural to kind of have a letdown. And then the first game after they had 3-4 games rest, I can't remember who it was against, but he looked like his normal self. And then you're just like, that's Jared Allen. We know that's Jared Allen. This time around, I just think they just need to get him involved a little bit more early. Kind of how they're doing with Evan. Evan kind of was the guy that they wanted to get engaged early in first quarters over the last year or so, just so that he was involved. And, he has the ball and he's handling a little bit more now. I think you kind of can force feed Jarrett early just to get him in the flow, find him on some high handoffs, get him a couple of jump hooks. He's been trying to work with that left hand. He had a couple yesterday against the Wizards. So that's just, I think, again, a nitpicky thing to look at. I wouldn't necessarily be concerned over, but you asked, so that's my answer.
Well, and to be clear, when we're talking about a team that is 19-3. They have the best record in basketball, and anything that we say as far as areas they can improve is nitpicky. They've been incredible, but it's that they haven't been perfect. And I'm not saying that they're bad at these things. I'm just saying that these are some areas where maybe they could be better. And I think the offensive rebounding thing is an interesting point, because Kenny Atkinson made it it was a topic prior to this season that he wanted them to crash the offensive glass a little bit more frequently than this Cavs team had in the past. And in looking through the numbers, the Cavs actually are offensive rebounding at a lower rate than they were previously. They're collecting right now just around 26% of their own misses, where before it was closer to 28, which that's not a huge difference, but it hasn't been an improvement either. So that is the one other area that I look at it. Okay, of the preseason goals, or the preseason, I guess, things that the Cavs and Kenny Atkinson wanted to make as part of their identity, that is really the one that hasn't come through. Because you look at pace, I think they were 24th in pace during last season. They're 8th right now, which may even be a little bit higher than I expected them to be. Like, they have, I think, achieved a lot of their goals, but there are still some that they haven't gotten to. And the defense is the one that they spent a month playing really poor defense, where they were 20th in defensive rating in November. The last week or so, they're in the top 5. So, like, I'm not ready to say that's been fixed, but I think we are seeing signs on that end of the floor, Spencer. It's like, okay, things could be turning a corner here.
And we have to also remember a couple of different factors, too. Caris LeVert missed quite a few games in November. Dean Wade's been out with an ankle injury. Those are two very, very highly disruptive players that this Cavs team has defensively, just playing passing lanes, ball pressure. And then you can also look at the glass. Dean Wade, he pulled down, I think, 5 or 6 rebounds yesterday. That's a piece that they haven't had for a little while, since November 17th. Caris LeVert's been dealing with the knee injury, the inflammation, and he's come in the last few games coming back from injury, and just he's been looking good, just playing the ball close, making sure that his man isn't beating him, and also just kind of creating that havoc that they haven't had on the defensive end of the floor. So those two being back, I think, is big time. And just real quick, going back to the offensive rebounding piece, to play devil's advocate, it also could be because the Cavs are making a lot of shots, or at least they were in the first month, that maybe that doesn't really show real data because they were making too many shots. They didn't have opportunities to offensive rebound. However, you're going to see Dean Wade crashing the offensive glass. Kenny mentioned it to us pregame before, too, that it's got to be the guards as well. Isaac Okoro has been doing a good job at getting some of those extra possessions. I think Jalen Tyson is a guy that can earn minutes by doing that as well. and also, hustling on the defensive end. He got a good amount of shifts here in the last 4 or 5 games while Dean Wade and Karis LeVert were out, and he was able to kind of show what he could do as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. When you're shooting 51% from the floor and 40% from 3-point range, I mean, if the Cavs were good at free throws, which they're not, they're shooting 78% from the line. They're a middle of the pack team as far as that goes, but they could have a real opportunity to be a 50, 40, 90 team, which I would have to imagine has never happened. Maybe that's why the offensive rebounding isn't at the level that Kenny Atkinson maybe thought it would be. The Cavs, I think, Spencer, are going to have one all-star for sure. With how good they've been, they should get 2, if not 3. I want to talk a little bit about the all-star cases for Darius Garland and Evan Mobley coming up, because that is closer than you think to being a real conversation. We're going to do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Chime. The holidays are here. You're buying gifts. You're shopping around. There's a lot going on. Maybe at times in the past, you've had to dip into that savings account or increase the debt that you're taking on to handle some of those holidays expenses. We've all been there before, right? Like we've all spent more than maybe we should have during certain holiday seasons. Well, you can take control of your finances by using a Chime checking account with features like no monthly or maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Learn more today at chime.com/NBA. That's chime.com/NBA. You can join millions of Chime members who are working on financial progress. Today, Chime has spotted members over $32 billion in transactions through SpotMe, where friends can give friends a boost. Eligible members give complimentary boosts to temporarily increase a friend's SpotMe limit. When you give a boost, they can boost you right back to temporarily raise your limit as well. So set up direct deposit in your Chime account, and after a qualifying direct deposit of $200 or more, Chime will notify you to enroll in SpotMe. Then with an activated debit card, Chime will spot you up to $200 on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. Your next direct deposit is then applied to your negative balance, and Chime never charges overdraft fees for using SpotMe. So enjoy the holidays while keeping your financial goals on track with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/NBA. That's Chime, CHIME.com/NBA. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank NA or Stride Bank NA. Members FDIC. SpotMe eligibility requirements and overdraft limits to apply. Direct deposit timing depends on submission of payment file. Boosts are available to eligible Chime members enrolled in SpotMe and are subject to monthly limits. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs and for OTC withdrawals. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me and make sure you click subscribe. So, Spencer, I think it's fair to say that with a 19-3 record, with the top record in basketball, the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and it is relatively early, but teams are taking shape, and there's going to be an all-star conversation that is starting soon. It might not be here yet, but it's starting soon. The Cavs are going to be guaranteed to get at least one guy. I think it's fair to say that guy is going to be Donovan Mitchell. He is a perennial all-star. As long as he's healthy, he's somebody that should never miss an all-star game, and he's been the best player in the Cavs. That said, they've been good enough to merit to maybe even 3 all-stars, but I do think it's an interesting question. It's an interesting thought exercise. Right now, if you had to pick a second all-star for the Cavs, would it be Darius Garland or would it be Evan Mobley?
Probably Darius, just from the way that last season kind of ended for him in the second half of the year. And we all know what he dealt with at this point. We've talked it over and over and over again. Just the way he's responded this year, the way he's playing with a clear head. He is one of the best playmakers in the NBA, if not the right now. And he is just doing so much for this team to get others involved, but to also look for his own shot, catch shoots, pull up threes. He just has this looseness that he's playing with right now that I feel like has to be noticed by even those outside of Cleveland. And then you look at the commitment on the defensive end of the floor, and you can look recently at the job he did on Jason Tatum in that Celtics game, as right, switching early in the shot clock and bodying up and baiting him into taking bad twos and and really just kind of not backing down, and in his words, not being a punk, and doing everything that Kenny was asking of him. You can look back at even in New York early in the season when he got a game-winning stopping block on Jalen Brunson on a drive to the rim. Those are just two examples of how Darius has been good on the ball, but off the ball, you're looking at how he's playing the passing lanes, almost like a cornerback in football, because Kenny just loves that game. We know that. So I feel like he's definitely earned it. Evan's definitely on his way. Like, don't get me wrong there. Like, his increased responsibilities as a ball handler, the way that he's defensively been really his entire career, but offensively, the maturation of his game, being willing to attack downhill, really look at mismatches, but also just one-on-one winning matchups, even against non-mismatches, and getting to the rim using an array of dribble moves, spin moves, finishing with the left, finishing with the right, being willing to take threes here and there. I feel like he is on his way as well. But if I had to pick one right now, it would probably be DG.
So I think it'd be DG for me too. And I think that when you're looking at, because of how good the Cavs have been and because of the way Kenny Atkinson has managed this team, I almost think it's more fair to look at the counting stats as per 36 stats, Spencer, instead of just doing per game, because those are down pretty much across the board. I mean, I do think Mobley is the exception there, but they're down certainly for Mitchell and Garland, because instead of playing 35, 36 minutes a night, Donovan Mitchell's playing 31 minutes a night. And there's a big difference there. Darius Garland's minutes are down from when he's been healthy in the past. So his per 36 minutes, the year that he made the All-Star team, so this was 2021, right? 2021-22. 21.8 points per 36 minutes, 8.6 assists, 3 rebounds this year. 24.4 points, and this was before the Washington game, so maybe this changed a little bit. 8.1 assists and a career low 2.8 turnovers. That to me, you said that you think he's been one of the best playmakers in basketball. That number speaks that to me. Like, his assist to turnover ratio right now is better than it's ever been before. I really wish too that the NBA had a comeback player of the year award, because the Cavs not only would have one guy, but Ty Jerome would be in that conversation too. But with everything that Darius Garland went through, it's been so cool to see him have a year like this, where he's put himself, I think, very clearly back in the All-Star conversation, where he's not somebody that, we had conversations at the end of last year, do you try and trade Darius Garland? And those all look so silly in hindsight now, because he's back to being a star again.
That's who he is. And Donovan Mitchell has vehemently said these things. If you look at his press conferences, I forget which game it was, but when he just went on a diatribe about this is who he is, this is why he got paid what he paid, stay on that side, all that other stuff. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. You can look it up if you want to, but Donovan has just been at this guy's side ever since he came to Cleveland. George Niang spoke very highly of Darius Garland and continues to speak very highly of Darius Garland. I think when you have that kind of support from the veterans, Tristan Thompson on Media Day, same thing. They knew who Darius Garland is. This is not somebody who was just going to lose his talent out of nowhere for no reason. I mean, that's just kind of silly to expect that. And the bounce back he's had this year, combined with what Kenny Atkinson's doing to put him in the positions to succeed, I feel has really helped him out. And especially just, again, getting him off the ball, catch shoots, really doing a good job of getting to the corners, but also utilizing pick and rolls, whether it's small pick and rolls or pick and rolls with J.A. and Evan. He's been multifaceted. The favorite play that he has that I've talked about for years now is just when he turns the corner and defenders come towards him, he knows the exact moment whether he's taking the floater or if he's going to find a big for an alley-oop. Like, I love that recognition. He's, drive and kick to the outside if necessary. Depends on how the defenses are playing you, but he's handled that very well, and I think he's also maturing this season with his mind and knowing how to handle these situations and how to go about these scenarios when things aren't going great. He's playing very well still. I mean, you can even look at the 3 of 21 performance in Boston, and that could have easily put him into a shell. But he comes back and responds against Boston last Sunday, 12 days later, and has a terrific performance. It wasn't just the defensive side of the ball. It was getting, again, his teammates involved, shooting it well, and knowing the kind of shots that were going to be beneficial for the Cavs.
Yeah, I do think that there have been a lot of things that have gone really well for him. The way he responded to that Boston game, I thought was really important. And even during that Boston game, I'm not sure that the Darius Garland of years prior gets up to 21 shot attempts. Now, I know he was terrible that night. 3 of 21 is really bad. But I think Darius Garland of last year probably finishes that game like 2 of 15 and stops shooting and becomes a passive player. And that didn't happen. I took that as a good sign. And then the one last thing I will say about him, he's shooting the 3-pointers that I think a lot of people have wanted him to be taking for a long time. He's up to almost 8 3-pointers per 36 minutes. Now he's shooting 45% from deep, which is probably going to come down a little bit at a certain point. I don't know if that number can stick up there that high all season long, but he is one of the best shooters in basketball. And he's finally, I think, taking advantage of that. I think he should be an all-star. And Spencer, I know certainly you do too. Now, when Spencer signed on to Locked On Cavs today, he pounded his fist on the table and said, Danny, I've got to talk about Sam Merrill. So we're going to talk about Sam Merrill next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is, of course, America's #1 sports book. That's why I tell you about FanDuel all the time, because it is the best. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, NHL, NBA, all of it, all in one place. So if you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, so much more right in the same place where you place your bets. Just go to FanDuel.com today. Maybe you like the Cavs as they take on the Denver Nuggets Thursday night in Cleveland. This is a big game. This is a game I'm very excited to see. Maybe you like the Cavs to win that, or maybe you say, screw that. I like the Cavs to win the NBA Finals. Well, right now, the Cavs have the 5th best odds in basketball to win the Finals at plus 1,200. They're only behind Boston, OKC, Dallas, and New York. Now, I'm not buying New York. I think the Cavs are a better basketball team than that. I think the Cavs are going to be in the conference finals. So maybe just maybe that's a good play. But if you want to do that and so much more, FanDuel Sportsbook is the place to go. Like I said earlier, you can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. To do that, just head on over to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com today to sign up. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show everywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Spencer, what do you have for us on Sam Merrill?
He touched the paint. He touched the paint last night. And that was Donovan. He was so happy. He's like, that's the guy I saw at Utah State when I was watching when I was with the Jazz. Like, he's not just being the 3-point shooter that everybody and other teams expect him to be. Now, this isn't anything new. Like, I'm not saying that this is the first time that Sam's not done something that has been outside of the perimeter. But you can clearly see the commitment to the defensive end of the floor. He is getting bodies on bodies when you look at the film. Like, sometimes he's not going to win those matchups, but he's also willing to put his body in harm's way, as we know, taking charges and just making sure that the opponent knows that he's there. Offensively, I feel like we talked about this a little earlier in the season. Kenny likes to drag his defender into actions on screens in the middle of the floor, get some mismatches there. But in this case, I felt like he did a good job of turning the corner, getting to the paint, and then just making the fundamental play. I feel like we don't talk about that enough. Just the little simple bounce pass to the guys that are available once defenders come in and trying to stop his taking to the rim. Like, Sam got a couple layups yesterday, but it also opened up his outside game. He hit 4 of 9 threes, but he also had the 6 dimes. And you can kind of see the playmaking chops with Sam when he's in that situation. I know it's against Washington, but that's something that you can utilize if you're Kenny Atkinson. When you have a shooter that can find his teammates and do the simple things the right way, I feel like that's big time. And for Sam, that's going to get him on the floor still.
Right. And I think there are 2 things, Spencer, that have stood out to me with Sam Merrill's game so far this year. One has been the 2-man game with him and Evan Mobley. Like, those two have such a great chemistry Evan does a great job, I think, setting up Sam for open threes and opportunities to get downhill. I think Sam does a great job of using the gravity that he has as a shooter and maybe to a little bit lesser extent as a driver to take away attention from Evan and get Evan really good looks at the basket too. So that is thing number one. Then you brought up the defense. One of my favorite things so far to watch this season with the Cavs is when Sam is in the game and the other team has a really good perimeter player and they find Sam Merrill and they go after Sam Merrill. And you can watch them learn in real time. Oh, Sam Merrill is not a bad defender. Like there have been so many instances where your star players like Jason Tatum did it the other night where he just sees Sam Merrill and he thinks, oh, that is barbecue chicken. I'm going after that. That's a bucket. And it's not, because Sam is not a bad defender. And that has been one of the best things to watch about him playing on that end of the floor this year.
I just recall watching Damian Lillard think the same thing.
Right, yeah, that's
when
another
he was
one.
In Cleveland, that was the other one that I was thinking of. Yes, he torched the Cavs, but just like if you look at the matchup and you actually go back and watch the film, like he was frustrating Dame. And that was kind of funny to see that because you just wouldn't expect it. Perennial All-Star, future Hall of Famer, and he's going against Sam Merrill, somebody who's been in the NBA really for 2 years in a legitimate role and not just at the end of the bench. And he was giving him some fits. So Sam doing that on the defensive end of the floor, and as we mentioned earlier, just touching the paint, making sure that he's just not one-dimensional the way that other teams might see him as. And I feel like other squads are going to start recognizing that, and then I'm interested to see how Sam reacts to that once he starts getting guarded inside of the arc. So that's going to be a cool watch. And you brought up Evan. I think that was a really good point. I love watching him on the DHOs coming off of the screens, right. And he's not hesitating one bit shooting those threes. He's not shooting the best percentage this year, guys. It's just not happening for him at the moment. But, law of averages says for Sam Merrill, at least that we're seeing that those are going to go down a little bit more frequently as we go on in this season. And I think one more thing, I feel like him and Donovan Mitchell really have a good synergy together, and you can utilize a little bit more small pick and roll with those two. Because when Donovan's dribbling up the floor and the first thing he looks up and sees Sam Merrill there, I feel like those are easy walk-up transition opportunities for either him or for Sam. And you kind of are going to watch the defenders try to make a decision in an odd man rush, so to speak. Do I go to Sam? Do I go to Don? What do I do here? So those are, I think, things that can develop. And those two also just have a natural chemistry dating back to their days in Utah.
Right. They do. Watching that 3-man lineup, and I wish I had the number in front of me. I don't right now. I'm trying to pull it up as I talk, but obviously Evan and Donovan together has been the best pairing that the Cavs have had, like in the high volume type of minutes, like that have played a ton of minutes. You can point to, other guys that might have a little bit better numbers, but they're not playing a ton of minutes. The Cavs have used that pairing so well this year, and adding Sam Merrill into that, I think, adds another dimension. And he has played a decent chunk of minutes alongside those guys, but that's been a really fun thing to see. That has been one of my favorite things that Kenny Atkinson has done, where last year Darius Garland played a lot of minutes with Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell played a lot of minutes with Jarrett Allen, where this year it's been flipped. And that's been a really cool thing to see, just how much success that group has had together, because that was, I think, a little bit of an unknown coming into this year. We didn't know how that pairing would go. We didn't know how Kenny Atkinson would handle that. So that was the one thing that when you speak of like just groupings on the floor that I really like, and when Sam is with those two guys, they're plus 9.4 points per 100 possession. The offense can still get a little bit better, but I think that might speak to a little bit to just how good of a defender Sam Merrill is.
And credit to Kenny Atkinson for just experimenting and trying crap. I mean, like that, right. That's literally what it is. And, it led to him winning the NBA Coach of the Month for, October and November in the Eastern Conference. First time he's ever won the award. So congratulations to him. But the first thing he pointed to was the continuity of this team and that they're already together. And the word he keeps going back to, connected. And that, I feel like for Kenny has to make it easier on him, but you also got to give him credit, and he has to pat himself on the back because he's finding the combination. He's pushing the buttons, and he's doing a lot of the stuff to put them in positions to be successful.
Yes, Kenny Atkinson, congratulations on the Coach of the Month award. It's well-deserved. Obviously, when you have a record like the Cavs have, you're going to get accolades. I was a little surprised, just a little surprised that no one on the Cavs got Player of the Month. I thought that maybe Donovan Mitchell would get that, but maybe the slide at the end of the month prevented that. But I thought, that could happen, but Kenny Atkinson certainly deserved it. But Spencer, where can everyone find your stuff?
Man, where do we start? So on X and on Blue Sky, I'm at Spin Davies. You can find the post-game interviews and post-game shows that we do at Cavaliers on SI at Cavaliers on SI's YouTube channel. We also have a podcast, Courtside with Cavs on SI. We've just started it the last, month or so. So make sure to go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcast, and do the same thing. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, review, do all that good stuff. Also, for my non-Cavs work, I am at rg.org. I do interviews with other teams and the players on the rise. I feel like I do a decent job with the exclusives. Just talked to Jalen Johnson, who gave Cavs fans fits last week, and is really somebody that a lot of people got to pay attention to. So check out our interview over there at rg.org. I'm also doing work for Babcock Hoops as a draft profile guy. So yeah, lots of stuff that I do. So just follow me on my social channels, X, Blue Sky, Instagram, at Spin Davies, and of course, all the good work we're doing at si.com/NBA/Cavaliers.
Yes, and make sure you are subscribed to the Locked On Cavs podcast. Like he said, you can find this show anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review as well. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. And if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest from Locked On Cavs. I will be back tomorrow after the Cavs take on the Denver Nuggets at home.